Maybe just a word about the company and the context in which industry it operates. Hitachi Energy operates in a power grids space. It has been transformed from ABB Power Grids and was acquired by Hitachi 2.5 years ago. And now it's part of the Hitachi Group as a standalone business. And as I said, to a large extent, it's a project business. Some of the project may last, up to a few years, and driven by the sustainability wave and the renewable sources of energy, where we provide equipment and solution. The business is actually in a growth mode, which of course brings the topic of the scenario planning even more relevant for us. On the next page, just maybe few definitions and a bit of a building blocks of the scenario planning. So as everybody can expect, the scenario planning is the financial process where we have multiple scenarios for the future. Typically, we might be looking at them as kind of a base scenario, worst case scenario, and the best case scenario. And then these scenarios are helping us to make actions, respond to the difficulties, and then address the opportunities. And then the key building blocks is definitely the identification of the key drivers that would drive the financial outcomes, assessment of the potential risk and opportunities, and addressing and developing the right strategies to achieve the goals and realize those opportunities and manage the risks. Then, of course, we need to have a range of those scenarios. So it's not just one answer, but a bit of a range from as I said, from the worst case scenario to best case scenario, with some midpoint, which typically is taken to the forecast. And of course, these kind of a scenario planning or models that needs to be stress tested. So it's not only deploying and running with them, but also trying to understand how accurate these scenarios are. So it's not only looking forward, but also stress testing them backwards and looking how the reality happened versus the scenario, in order to change the drivers, change the variables, change the assumptions. On next page, basically you will see key success factors. We don't have to go through all of that, but clearly we need to have goals and objectives for every company, every business and industry will have their respective needs and nature. Some of the businesses are the volume-based, volume-driven, so a lot of transactions, but individual transaction might be of low volume. There are some businesses, probably more like Hitachi Energy, where we have a larger, mid-size and large projects where individual transaction can have a significant influence on the financial performance. Then reliable data. So while the scenario planning is focused on the future, then of course we need to baseline ourselves in the historical financial performance. Some of the subjective and objective variables like economic data, market trends, FX rate, and so forth. Then assumptions and the variables, we need to define that clearly and document so it's understood. Then range of scenarios, I mentioned that, best case, worst case, most likely, or even other ranges of scenarios depending how we define that scenario planning model. Important piece is that the model and the process needs to be flexible, so need to be adaptable, and also needs to be efficient from timing perspective. Cannot be too complex. So inverted commas simple doesn't mean simplistic, but simple in a way that could be understandable. Because if there are too many complexities and too many variables, the sum of those components might be even contradicting each other in that model. And probably the last one, but probably the most important, is actually actionability. So the scenario planning is not to only expect the ranges, but effectively take actions that can help us achieve the financial but also strategic goals. Then if we move to the next page, a little bit of context before I go to some operational and practical applications of that scenario planning in Hitachi Energy. In the business that I operate, we are providing engineer solutions and products. Projects are typically 5 to 100 million, but sometimes even larger, and they last up to 3 to 4 years at the maximum. We apply percentage of completion revenue methodology. And then there are a few drivers which are extremely important for the financial performance: is the orders, revenues, and cash. But of course, orders, how they convert into revenues, this is one of the elements which are very, very important. That's why when we are looking in the scenario planning, the few things are very important. One is a very precise and very well understood planning of the orders, in terms of what is in the forecast, what is in the budget, what is in the backup, what is the timing, value, and the profitability of those orders. Then the next one, which is also very important, is the convertibility of those orders into the revenues, because depending on the nature of the project, the scope, and the duration, the speed of conversion to revenues will vary. And because of the size of the project, it can significantly impact the financial projections. Then, of course, documented assumptions in the forecast and also for the modeling. And then something which supports very strongly the assessment of those best and worst case scenario is the register of the risk and opportunities, which we are very closely monitoring and actioning on. And then the last piece there is, how all of these assumptions convert to load assessment and the load charts, which basically means, how busy or underutilized our people may be, depending on those scenarios. And then we might be anticipating some of the actions, either in terms of increases in the headcount footprint, or opposite, depending on the outcome. So then, if we go to the practical elements, of course, it's not the intention to provide the instruction here, but just a few examples. What we are using, and actually what is also important. For orders, for example, we are using the system which probably most of you know and maybe even uses, the Salesforce. And one of the elements here, we also develop a lot of useful dashboards and reports that could be slice and dice in different format. We have these scenarios in terms of what is in the forecast, what is in the backup, what's the total pipeline. What is critical here is actually that's the point of the truth. So it's if we are using that, then of course everybody should be using that, and the point of truth is only there, nowhere else. That's orders. And then how these orders convert into revenue and cash in the convertibility model. So we have certain models for different types of projects in different industries, and then we can plug the assumed orders in the forecast into the model and calculate what would be revenue coming out of those orders. And then the risk and opportunities. So of course, we document our assumptions, what goes into the forecast, and then we are managing specific risks and opportunities that helps us derive that range of the outcomes between the best case, worst case, and the base case. So it connects to a very important piece in the financial planning, which is avoidance of the surprises. And sometimes having good surprises or bad surprises might equally be detrimental to the forecasting or budgeting predictability. And the last piece, which I mentioned before, is the load charts. So effectively, it's conversion of the load coming from already projects that we have and execute, plus the new projects from the forecast. Excuse me. And then with that, we can plan where do we stand, by function, by the unit, by business. Where do we stand in terms of the requirements for the people in different disciplines? And with that, we can take certain HR-related actions, which of course have respective lead times. And then it's a cycle. We have a forecast, scenario planning, it's kind of feedback and loop itself, and then actions connected to that, and it's basically a running process. So then, if I conclude with some summary of that, basically the scenario planning and the deployed models and tools needs to be relevant and business specific. So each of you need to look at your specific business, what to deploy and how to deploy that. It needs to be fast and flexible, need to be relatively simple and understandable, needs to be aligned between participants, stakeholders, and management. And the last one, again, is the actionability. So all of this should drive action and not just information. And with that, basically, you can have some good baseline for the good scenario planning process and the system, and then improve from there and see how it works for you.